Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another speech on New Year's Eve. Today, I will tell the full story of my comic series, that is Simple Celebrities, and my thoughts on the upcoming new year. So let's get started. First, I will tell you about what inspired the series. Back in 2019, when I was in 6th grade, I saw the music video for a rap song by Lil Dicky called Earth on YouTube on my grandma's tablet. I was curious about what it was, and I was obsessed with space at the time, so I clicked on the video and I found out that it had a lot of featured artists, mainly the celebrities that are the main characters of the series. And later in 2019, when I was in 7th grade, I imagined a Three Stooges parody, and it being a crossover of one of those featured artists in the song. So that is what started the inspiration for my series. Another main inspiration was Rainbow Kitty 101's comic parody videos. I used to be a fan of her before the scandals of her were uncovered all across the internet. Now, I don't really think of her that much. Her comics had characters from random franchises and comics with random topics, sometimes with popular music playing in the background. Also, I must also tell you that it was also none other than that space series, i.e. Simple Cosmos, that inspired the series. As I told you before, I was an obsessive fan of that series when I first listened to that rap song about Earth. So I took some elements from the comics of that series and put them into my comics. Miley Cyrus's role in the series was inspired by Venus. Katy Perry's was inspired by Earth, and mine was inspired by the narrator. Or the Star's version of Eduardo Augusto. In fact, Tom's Celebrity Games role was inspired by the solar system. Now, here are the other inspirations. The reason why Elijah Wood is in this series is because he was the voice actor of Mumble from Happy Feet, a film I like. And the reason why the Powell family from Oshitake Mushrooms is in this series is because I thought it would be interesting to have a YouTube family I found interesting in my series. And the reason why Rachel Bloom is in this series is because she portrayed a character from Trolls World Tour, another film I liked. And the reason why Selena Gomez is in this series is because I found a photograph of her which I found attractive and imagined if she were in my series. And the reason why Simon Toefield is in this series is because he is the creator of Simon's Cat, a series I watched on Facebook. It has a YouTube channel, and that is what inspired my YouTube channel. And Tom's name was actually inspired by a Texas speech voice that is widely used in many EAS scenarios. You know, the EAS guy Tom, and his appearance was inspired by an actor who starred in an old fairy tale cartoon series I used to watch, which led to my imaginations about Eduardo Augusto, and my imaginations of the series about me being made by him and his grandfather. Actually, the space series is what inspired my imaginations of Eduardo Augusto, but that fairy tale series further expanded it. Anyways, so Tom would be a former radio person. Now, let's talk about its development and its birth. I first started working on the series in early 2020, weeks prior to the start of the COVID-19 crisis. However, my younger brother Bryce was born, so distractions would start. I had to go to my Nana and Pa's to work on the comics. Then, in the summer of 2020, I began working on what would be the first comic, Weather Forecasts. The comic was about a tornado hitting the city where Chris Gaffey, after leaving Detroit after Miller's daughter died, and Tom's Celebrity Gang lived, and causing catastrophic damage. The city the series was going to be set in was Kuala Lumpur, Illinois. Yes, in real life, Kuala Lumpur is the capital of Malaysia, another country, but in my imagination, Kuala Lumpur would be the second largest city in Illinois, being located along the Ohio River at the Illinois-Kentucky border, north of Paducah. Anyways, since I find drawing real cities stressful, I decided to set in a city I made up, which is Osanio in Beaver Island of Michigan, within Lake Michigan. I know what you guys are thinking. Why isn't my series set in Los Angeles? Well, like I told you, I find drawing real cities stressful. Plus, I haven't been to Los Angeles and don't really know what it's like there other than Hollywood and the entertainment industry. I could have set it in Detroit, but I chose Osanio because it is a city I made up, which would make drawing less stressful. Now, let's talk about its life. After I made weather forecasts, I made a video where the celebrities go on a vacation to Charlevoix, Michigan. During the time I created my series, I had a great love for that city because of its presence on the waters and its beautiful buildings and attractions. Anyways, they were staying there as Kuala Lumpur was being rebuilt, but due to the failure to complete the rebuilding on time, the celebrities decided to move here to Osanio. Throughout its life, I was making videos of topics I could think of. I made tribute videos, I made birthday videos, I made speeches, I made comics about interesting facts, etc. I also ended up spreading a lot of personal information, like to get sympathy from others, like about people I know who got injured or have been get or had caught an illness like COVID. I saw a lot of YouTubers do that, like they post personal information. So I ended up doing that, but my mom told me to take them down, thankfully. I don't know why people's parents would let them post personal information, but I don't want to talk about that because I could offend some people with that. I also made videos that weren't related to simple celebrities, like videos from my other series, Christian Fanins, which were Blueberry Inflation comics of some characters from the Christian series and EAS scenarios, travel videos, and how-to videos. Now, let's talk about the Blueberry Inflation and Weight Gain comics. These were my most popular kinds of videos. They were so popular that some people even added them in their own playlists of Blueberry Inflations. In fact, Blueberry Inflation is very popular on the internet. I don't really know why, but it's... never mind that. Anyways, remember that scene from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory where Violet blew up into a blueberry? Well, that scene inspired many Blueberry Inflation parodies. I found a lot of them on DeviantArt and was fascinated by them. I also saw a couple Blueberry Inflation parodies on the now defunct Rainbow Kitty channel. So I had the idea of turning a few female main characters, their celebrities, into blueberries. That also went for weight gain, where their bellies got bigger by eating a lot of food or drinking a lot of drinks. However, I later unlisted them because a considerable amount of these types of fan art were not appropriate, especially for school and camp. And I mentioned my channel to my school and camp. Also, when Grandma subscribed to my channel, I stopped using Grandma's tablet, I should say, because I didn't want inappropriate content via having Blueberry Inflation and Weight Gain comics appear on her algorithm feed, because I was watching a lot of educational stuff and children's related stuff on there, and I didn't want it to be ruined by inappropriate stuff, especially those Blueberry Inflation comics that were like more fetishy, I should say. Anyways, these were one of the easiest kinds of comics to draw. Anyways, let's now talk about how I lost interest in it. When I entered 9th grade in 2021, I had imagined that I had a DeviantArt and or Wattpad account. I would have been able to expand my series across the web rather than just having a YouTube channel. As I already said, Simon's Cat inspired my channel, but not Deviants. I love DeviantArt, and I would have been able to post fan art and my own art rather than just videos. Posts weren't available to me, plus, I can't see the number of views on my posts. Anyways, during 2021, I imagined time being in the epilogue of the Trolls franchise. And when September rolled in, I realized that it would be the first anniversary of the start of the epilogue. I also realized that one of the troll characters' leaders would reach an age I didn't care for. In fact, most of the troll leaders had their birthday in the same week. And after that, I didn't really care for the time I was in, and that made me not want to do something new or anything I haven't did in a long time. I had the same feeling during 6th grade because of the constant changes of the space series as art styles, and that is the main reason what led to my depression. And I believed that I should have made a DeviantArt account when I created my series because the number of episodes was at a high number. So I believed it was too late to make other accounts for my series. You see, many of my videos were snubbed by the algorithm. Those two reasons were the bedrock of what started my depression. The thought of being in the one-year epilogue of the Trolls franchise is now outdated because a third film has been revealed. I used to think of it as the Trolls moving across America in the human world in search for a new home because their old home was being destroyed in an earthquake. And I believed around the end of the journey most troll leaders would have had their birthdays. Anyways, let's go back on topic. I also had thoughts of having an Some Fanon series like Christian Fanon's, where he, his family, my family, and the Augusto army with Eduardo Augusto and the main characters of every DreamWorks franchise would hang out at a warehouse in Detroit, where Hollywood would have been located, on no school days and go on a lot of adventures. I won't get into too much detail as that would be very long, so you can hear the speech in another video. The link is in the description below. Anyways, as 2021 ended and into 2022, my interest in my channel began declining, due to regrets of not having other accounts and thoughts of doing an Some Fan series. In March of 2022, I began to separate my content into different channels, because I heard that a reason why my videos were going unnoticed was because of diverse content. I tried everything to get my series to grow, doing topics that would interest people, like doing tribute to celebrity videos, fact videos, Blueberry Inflation comics, etc. Me wanting to make tribute videos came after the death of my great-grandma Ruth in June of 2021. Her death made me more curious about how death and funerals work. The only option that was successful was the Blueberry Inflation and Weight Gain comics. And in 10th grade, I wasn't doing my channel that much, but I swapped to doing digital drawing after I got a drawing iPad for Christmas that year. These were my first few drawings I did on my drawing pad. These were drawn just after Christmas of 2022, the Christmas I got the drawing pad. In 11th grade, I tried more attempts to boost my channel again. I started making YouTube shorts, which were inspired by relatable shorts, and I tried to make my own versions of them. And they were considerably successful, but now I'm not on my channel that much. Most shorts on my other channel, Christian Fanons, go more viral. In fact, on average, my videos on Christian Fanons tend to go more viral than Simple Celebrities does. I don't really know why, but it could be because of the more number of Blueberry Inflation comics and EAS scenarios. Anyways, I also wrote pretty much my first episode that was related to a serious topic that is unfacebooked. It was about everyone's account being terminated for no reason. But then we found out that Facebook was shut down by civil authorities because of its havocs and atrocities on society, especially with their CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, who got arrested at the end, and I had everyone switch to banned so that they could have a chance to communicate only with those in their groups. I am now in senior year, 12th grade. Ever since this summer, I haven't really been producing a lot of videos, but I did start posting speeches, one about the main reason why I was losing interest in my series, one about my depression, and one about my thoughts on how the media was owned. I also sang along to 2 songs by One Direction in tribute to Liam Payne, and even made a tribute video about him. I also made a short about what the characters of Simple Celebrities would look like in their real forms but drawn. Now, let's get to the conclusion and summary of the story. It seemed like an exciting topic to write about, which was me being with celebrities, but then lost interest in it because it got ideas for topics I was more fascinated with, like a fantasy series about and DreamWorks. I could have had other accounts to post my series besides YouTube, and I could have posted my videos on Facebook, but a web series inspired me to put my own videos on YouTube. In fact, I was going to make a separate Facebook page for it, but my parents said I already had a page, and one was enough. First, I started drawing my comics on paper and recording them, but then went to digital drawing, which was easier for me with a lot of noise at my house. Making the series was a lot more stressful than I thought it was going to be due to distraction and noise at home, especially with my brothers, having only one account and my videos going unnoticed, having a sole computer, etc. Also, if I had more resources and apps to make and edit my videos, and if I signed into my account on my computer earlier, just after I got my new computer and after making the account, my channel, I would have been more advanced and more progressed on my channel than I am today. This would mean production would have been more easier for me if I were to just post them on YouTube. And that way I would get more noticed views. And I should have researched some advice to how to grow my channel as soon as I started my channel and get famous on YouTube. Especially dwelling on the past and having fantasies that were connected to my extreme interest in a space series on DeviantArt. Especially Disney and DreamWorks. If you want to know more, look at the videos in the description. I would also like to add, if I never made my series in the first place, I would be less depressed, have slightly more self-esteem and more focus on reality and less stressed out. And throughout its life, I had imaginations and thoughts about it being produced by Eduardo Augusto just after he ended the Christian series in 2013. It would have been made in September of 2013 and set in Detroit, Michigan. It would have been animated by Eduardo Augusto and his animation crew, his modern animation crew. It would have also starred a few more people on the series, and it would also have had the Lawrence family in it too. And it would also star Christian's friends in it as well, and it would have been a lot bigger than it is in real life. But however, that show, along with that fictional Some show and shows related to that, those would only exist if I traveled back in time and made myself a celebrity starting from 1981, when Eduardo Augusto would have began his career. However, in my imaginations, I believe right now it's only the Christian series, So Sorry Planet Earth and World War II, and Simple Countries and Stupid Market, the media Eduardo Augusto created, would still exist in this universe, even when I'm not a celebrity. In fact, if it wasn't for that space series, I probably would have had a better view of the world, more focused on reality, and able to balance my life and what I need with my brothers, because I believe that's what's causing the division between my life, real life, what I need to do, and what I want to do. I think that's what's causing my division, especially my fantasy about being a celebrity and having low self-esteem, especially from Facebook, having a negative view of the world and having and being angry all the time because of all those angry reactions. I might do a rant about Facebook in the future, sometime after the new year. I also have been having these thoughts and imaginations that, what if I appeared on Dr. Phil sometime during the summer or sometime in 2022, and that way I would have been able to explain to him and the whole world about what I was going through on social media, especially bouncing between my imaginations and reality, and my imaginations of that space series, Eduardo Augusto, and imaginations that consume my sense of reality, all from that. Especially my series and my videos going unnoticed. understand some of my weird habits, etc., and people would be able to understand my situation, especially me having autism. Anyways, let's talk about my thoughts on this year in 2025 as well. Here are my thoughts on 2024. This year, I was expecting to grow my series, be healthier, stop dwelling on the past, balance my imaginations and my sense of reality, and find my depression. Even though this was successful early this year, it started to fall apart starting last summer. I slacked on exercising this summer, but went back since I wanted to be toned out for the homecoming. I visited a therapist just before I started school, but she went on leave. I was also desiring to get my driver's license this year, but we were so busy I couldn't get my license. But I did get a chance to explore some places in Michigan I haven't visited yet, so that was a plus. Also, I was hoping to go into Lapeer County. As you know, I never really noticed it before 10th grade because I mainly remember going into Flint and Port Huron, and that is between the two counties that host those two cities. And to top it all off, I discovered the county when I wasn't satisfied with the time I was in, since I was feeling nostalgic for 2019, and during the time before the 1 year anniversary of the start of the epilogue of my favorite franchise. My nostalgia and retrospection also went back to starting this summer. In short, I wasn't really to do what I wanted to do this year since summer, but early this year seemed successful. Now, let's talk about my thoughts on about 2025. Boy, it is going to seem like a big year for us. Trump is going to be president again, so a lot of changes are going to be made, and our food is going to get healthy like Europe, thanks to Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s food policies. Also, the year will start with Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, spelling WTF. And do you know what that year was the last time this happened? 2020. Also, if I look into theorizing of time being in the epilogue of Trolls, I imagine 2020 as 1981, when most of the franchise took place and ended, and I imagine 2021 as 1982, when the first year anniversary would hit. So I didn't really care for 2022 since it would have been 1983, when it would be over a year since the series started, and I don't care for the time that would be between a year and 5 years since the epilogue of my favorite franchise started. However, as the third movie was revealed, my feelings on it died down and focused more on myself imagining myself in my imaginary show, which would have been mostly set in the 2000s, the setting of each episode being exactly 20 years before the episode was released. So according to that, 2024 would be 2004. And 2020 would have been 2000. And 2021 would have been 2001. And 2022 would have been 2002. And 2025 would be 2005 also. Based on this and me imagining myself in the timeline, my theoretical timeline, I grew more nostalgic for late 2022, as it would have been around the early epilogue of the special, like the alternate universe Christian Gumbelson, where an alternate universe Christian Gumbelson goes in and there are conflicts with him, and him later revealed to be Joseph Stalin. And once they go into his universe, it would change all the courses of their life. It would further end political polarization and would change the original Christian drastically. Yes, episodes would be produced even after a year after the special was released, especially from that time to today, which would have been late 2023. It would still be producing episodes to this day, especially having episodes made long before it, like starting in like mid 2018. But however, it's a special, so I think between the ending of that and a year after that, would be like the golden era of the timeline, especially with Harry Potter. But I won't go into that. Anyways, not only that, if we look at me imagining myself in my theorized epilogue of the Trolls franchise, 2025 would be 1986. In the past, I despise 1986 looking back, as the leader would have been an age I didn't like. But when I became a fan of the bad guys, I imagined the original version of it being released in April of that year by DreamWorks, Eduardo Augusto and Super Simple Myers. Super Simple Myers would have been the author of the novel instead of Aaron Blabey, the real author. The novel would have been written in late 1981, just after the start of the epilogue of the Trolls franchise, which that thought's now outdated. This ties to my imaginary show and its timeline, but if we dig deeper into its timeline, it would have been released in 1966, having Walt Disney, Ub Iwerks, which would have been the founder of DreamWorks Animation, and some of Walt Disney's crew involved in the production with DreamWorks. You see, DreamWorks was founded way early in my theoretical universe. Anyways, 1986 would have been one of the big years in the history of the Augusto Army and Eduardo Augusto's career, since it would have been a peak in his animation, or most supposedly his anime era, where his artwork looked like the late Akira Toriyama's art style, one of his styles that inspired the design of the bad guys' characters, and his artwork would have been the most cartoonish in that year. Well, another likely thing too, would make that year so significant was because The Bad Guys would have been a popular film, the original and the remake, which would have been the real life movie version of that year. Also, I would like to reveal that his modern art style would be the style of Trollstopia. Yes, in my imagination, he is the character designer for the characters of Trollstopia, after the original one who worked on Trolls The Beat Goes On would have left the series, and the styles became more detailed. This would have started in January 2016 and would still go on to this day, which we would call this his modern art style, and probably his indefinite one. Let me break down the evolution of Eduardo Augusto's animation styles. Before I talk about that, I would like to note that Eduardo Augusto was always able to draw in an advanced way, like he does today. However, because computers were very slow and hard to operate and such, and it would have been expensive and kind of time-consuming for him to draw like that. And most of his animation crew would have had to draw the traditional animation way, and they would have had to combine drawing traditional animation and combine it with computer-drawn animation, and he would have had to done it in a cartoonish way. His first style, his human characters would have looked something like this, and his animal characters in Egyptian style would have looked something like this as well. And then, in late 1983, his artwork would go on to become more like Akira Toriyama's art style, but with the styles of his animals improving, and they would start to get lighting in their pupils. And his Egyptian style, the pupils would have become more dilated, just in a similar way like they are today. And in late 1986, his anime style would become very cartoonish. It would become like a hybrid of his anime style and Super Simple Myers' art style, which he drew from 1987 to 2007, the year I was born. But his animal style and Egyptian style would have remained the same. And as we get into 1987, from there to 2007, Super Simple Myers would have taken over his position in animating most of the humans. And his style would have been similar to that of Simon's Cat and Gravity Falls. And also, Eduardo Augusto's Egyptian style would have remained would still remain similar to how it is today. You know, when his anime era started, it started to become a bit more familiar, and it started getting more familiar over the years. Probably ending in like the early 2000s or like the start of the 2000s. and his animal style would have been animated in the same way he would draw Egyptians, like, people who he knows are of distant ancient Egyptian descent. That style he would depict ancient Egyptians in as his fictional race. Anyways, at the start of 2008, his animation style would become like this. Still having animals animated in his Egyptian style, and his Egyptian style being the same as it is today. He would still have some people from his animation group, his lifelong animators, but a lot of the animators would have started to get replaced over the years. So his animation style would look like this. This was the same style I used to draw my characters between mid-2021 and early 2022. And on New Year's Eve of 2015, his animation style would move on to like this. And also he would start to animate his animals the same way as he does his humans nowadays. This is his current style and will probably be indefinitely. But he still draws the Egyptians the same way he does today. The character, how the characters are designed in Sum. That's his Egyptian style. I mentioned that in previous videos, so I think some of you guys would be able to understand. Anyways, when he started work on Sum, he and the studio DreamWorks started to use Shutterstock images to replace most of the animator styles. But only a couple animators, him and probably one other, stayed, including in the hire of Super Simple Myers, which was Frank Myers. I'll give you a video in the description, like the introduction of one of my previous episodes, to get a better understanding in this. Anyways, because of that, I feel 2025 would have been a great year to get back on track, try life again, and get back to my pre-depression or COVID self. Also, I sometimes imagine myself starting in the 2010s again. So 2024 would have been 2014, and 2025 would have been 2015. What makes 2015 so significant is because I believe that year is when the world started to become the way it is today with technology, and that was when I started to grow up. Well, later that year, when I was in 3rd grade. Anytime before 3rd grade, I don't really care for looking back. And this started with the Space series, having it released so recent the time I discovered it, which was in 2017. Well, it was made in 2017, but I discovered it in early 2018. Look, I tend to view years as having two faces. It's probably because of the grades I'm in. The first phase of the year, I'm in a grade, and in the second phase of a year, I'm in another grade, and the cycle keeps going on. I had different interests during those grades, and that's making me view years as having two faces, like we do with a decade. For example, phase 1 of 2015, I was like hyperactive and pretty much acted a bit like a baby and was kind of immature. But in the second phase, I am more mature and slightly more focused in class and grew up a bit. And I view the first half of 2015 as like retro-ish and like still like old internet and slightly outdated technology, but the second half of 2015, it's slightly more modern and it's like similar to today. And mid 2015 would have been the border between the first and second half of the 2010s. I don't know what to say for the 2020s, since it seemed like technology hasn't really advanced that much since 2015 or like the late 2010s. It seems like we're still in the 2010s because of COVID and such. Now, let's talk about my resolutions and plans for 2025. As I said, I need to stop focusing more on the past and do what I wanted to do in a long time this year. And I hope to start driving this year as well. as a more productive way to escape the chaos at home and start exploring the world since the lockdown. I also want to spend less time on my phone and spend more time with the family. I also want to read the Bible about 12 minutes a night. That way I will finish on New Year's Eve next year, if time travel isn't invented yet. I also want to explore more places I haven't been to before in Michigan as well. I will also take an indefinite partial time out from Facebook and will only use it to post when I'm doing an update, due to all the toxicity and negative exposure of society. I also want to exercise and be healthier. Also, I am turning 18 this coming year, so I'll be considered an adult. So when you turn 18, they say you finally have freedom, but more responsibility. So it seems I will get my license just on time. Well, I'll get a permit, and Dad will take me driving, will teach me how to drive. When I got assessed with rows in geography again in 10th grade, I wanted to get my license. We tried to practice one time during the summer of 2022, but I gave up. But we started again in 11th grade. But when I turn 18, the teaching will be easier and just on the road. Again, my parents would have gotten me a license. Well, actually, they would get a permit and take me driving out on the road. However, I view that we are so far into the time after 2019. It seems like we lost sense of time since 2020. And for me, it was when I started imagining myself in the epilogue of the Trolls franchise, especially the first year anniversary of the start of it in September of 2021. And a lot of my favorite celebrities have died between 2021 and today, especially 2022 being at its worst. And I'm going to say this year was the second worst, being preceded by 2023. They say 2016 was the deadliest year for celebrities, but I believe 2022 is another deadly year. And with a lot of my favorite celebrities gone, I fear to expand my future because I'm afraid they wouldn't have, because I believe that they wouldn't have lived to see it. But I remind myself that they are able to get to do it if they are able to go to heaven. And I also have taking part from what the Mexicans believe about life after death, Dia de los Muertos. They would be able to view those actions and those new medias that were released before they died. They would be able to listen to it or view it once they come back from the afterlife, heaven, I should say. Even though I don't really like the number 18, and I don't view it as a beautiful number, unlike most numbers that end in 8, like 28 and 38, I will probably be satisfied with the year I am in, because you know why. Now, here are my predictions for next year. My biggest prediction is that time travel would be invented around my 18th birthday, so I can prove my fantasies as real and finally get to live in a world where I was a celebrity, and my imaginations were all reality. If Jesus wants me to experience one more full year and pretend we are in 1986, it would become true around Christmas, especially with the quantum race. It seems teleportation and quantum computing are becoming a reality, and it is expected to go more public next year, so I hope they go faster. And we hope we can return to a pre-COVID world, but with us being more wiser. And we hope we can have a decent life under Trump, and see who is right about him, the Democrats or Republicans. I will also start college later in 2025. Well, that's all of my speech. Have a happy New Year, and make 2025 the most decent year of the 2020 since 2021, and the most decent year ever since 2019. Goodbye now, and have a happy New Year.